Tirana, November 2015. The capital of Albania was the stage for an exceptional gathering. More than 140 church leaders from 65 countries met for a conference on the topic of discrimination, persecution, martyrdom, following Christ together. They came from every contemporary Christian movement, representing churches that are sometimes unaware of or in competition with each other. This conference, the first of its kind in the modern Christian era, was organized at the initiative of the Global Christian Forum. The Global Christian Forum was founded within a context of major transformation affecting the contemporary religious landscape. The center of gravity of the Christian world is clearly shifting southwards, and the Pentecostal and charismatic churches are experiencing very rapid growth. This was the situation at the end of the 20th century, when the WCC, World Council of Churches, under the leadership of its General Secretary Konrad Reiser, launched an appeal to create a new platform to bring together Christians of every denomination. This ultimately became the Global Christian Forum.
He was prophetic and humble, Konrad Reiser, because he said in the World Council of Churches, only about 1/4 of Christianity meets. The historic Protestant churches, the Orthodox churches, Anglican Church are members of the World Council of Churches. There are only a few Evangelical and Pentecostal churches, and the Catholic Church is not a member, even though it works closely with the World Council of Churches. And so the leadership of the WCC said in the General Assembly of the WCC in 1998, which took place in Zimbabwe, said we need a new space, we need a new table, we need a new forum where the leadership of the whole spectrum of Christian churches is willing to at least meet one another, learn to know one another, and see what happens next.
Larry Miller is a pastor of the Mennonite Church, a church founded in the 16th century and known for its commitment to peace. He was General Secretary for the Mennonite World Conference for 22 years. Having been involved in the work of the Global Christian Forum from its creation, he became the Secretary in 2012.
I was in Harare, Zimbabwe at the World Council of Churches General Assembly in 1998. When Konrad Reiser said we need a new forum. And increasingly I felt drawn to that kind of vocation of walking together with other churches. And I began to realize that in my own mind, peace wasn't enough. There was something, that unity was somehow beyond and incorporating peace. And it became more and more for me the focus of what I considered my own calling and perhaps my own ministry.
In the years that followed the meeting of the Ecumenical Council of Churches in Harare, conversations began to take form that led to the official launch of the Global Christian Forum 4 years later. That's when a gathering took place in June 2002 at the famous Fuller Evangelical Faculty of Theology in Pasadena, United States, which was attended by the representatives of the entire Christian world, including old and new churches.
The people who were there speak of a kind of revelation where they came to one mind to say, yes, the time has come for us to enter into a continuing conversation with one another. And they were able to craft about a 3-sentence purpose of statement, which affirms the full humanity and the full divinity of Jesus Christ and the Trinitarian nature of God. And on that basis, then, we're able to move forward through a series of other meetings in the following years.
The first global gathering took place in 2007 in Limuru in Kenya, attended by an unprecedented diversity of Christian families from all over the world. It was to be followed by a second gathering in Manado in Indonesia in 2011.
From the very beginning, the Global Christian Forum and those who conceived of it and set it in motion said, we do not desire another institution. We do not want to create a new church. The Global Christian Forum's objective is to bring to the same table, to the same conversation, the whole spectrum of contemporary Christianity. So one of the questions is always, who's missing? Who is not yet in the conversation? And so we look around the world and we see what exists, what churches there are. And if we see churches that are not yet participating in the conversation, they have a priority in terms of who we invite next.
An international committee made up of representatives of Christian communions and global organizations supervises and guides the work of the Forum. The Catholic Church, the World Council of Churches, the World Evangelical Alliance, and the World Pentecostal Fellowship have 2 representatives each.
The Global Christian Forum is playing an active role in the major changes that we are experiencing at the ecumenical level. Until now, we had conducted a dialogue with the historical churches, that is, the Lutherans, the Reformed Protestant churches, the Anglicans, the Baptists, etc. Currently, we have new ecumenical partners that are developing very rapidly. That is, the free churches, the evangelical movements, the Global Evangelical Alliance, and the Pentecostals. Among the Christians, in terms of numbers alone, the Pentecostal churches make up the second biggest grouping after the Roman Catholic Church, and this new forum, where we can work together to promote ecumenism with these new partners in a different way than previously, is a very effective body, in my opinion.
Halte ich dieses Gefäß für sehr geeignet.
We have established what we call a kind of 50-50 principle. We always try to have about 50% of the participants in a Global Christian Forum event coming from the historic ecumenical movement. So that would be the Orthodox churches, the Protestant churches, the Anglican communion, and the Catholic Church. And the other 50% are one can call them the younger churches. The churches that come from the Evangelical movement, 18th and 19th centuries, and the Pentecostal movement, charismatic movements of the 20th century.
I think that the evangelical and Pentecostal movements have felt the need to join in the ecumenical movement, in keeping with a method that suits their theology, their spirituality, and their way of living out Christianity. A new space was therefore needed for these new arrivals that could give priority to interpersonal relationships, an existential involvement, and a certain flexibility in acting. Evangelicals and Pentecostals have grown in the knowledge of the need for a theology of unity, of growing in a theology of the body of Christ. And therefore this space provides them with the opportunity to do this. At the beginning of the Global Christian Forum, a crucial question arose. How could those who are normally engaged in ecumenical conversations and those who are not learn to speak to one another? An idea came to the persons who were leading the process. To start the dialogue, ask each participant to share the story of their walk with Jesus Christ. This practice is less common in older churches, but well known in the evangelical and Pentecostal world. where it is normal practice to give one's personal testimony and to tell the story of one's conversion.
So the method is a sharing of each participant's faith stories, experiences of faith. We start each meeting with a time that lasts as long as necessary, during which each participant is invited to speak for 5 minutes about their faith, based on 2 questions in particular. How did you meet with Christ in your life? How did you experience that? How did you become a Christian? And then, secondly, what change did that make in your life? It's these short testimonies, 5 minutes per person, that allows the participants in a group, where there is a great diversity of Christian traditions, to recognize in the other a brother or a sister in Christ, despite their differences, even despite the prejudices that we can sometimes have about each other.
At Manado, I witnessed a meeting between 2 church leaders of the Middle East, and the effect that the methods employed by the Global Christian Forum, that is, the sharing of the faith testimony, could have on them. The charismatic pastor asked the Orthodox priest, "How long have you been a Christian?" To which the other replied, "For 2,000 years." Naturally, for the charismatic pastor, it was not easy to hear this. And naturally, it was not easy for the Orthodox priest to hear the language used by the Pentecostals, who refer to a language of conversion, of breaking with the past. When we encounter Christ, there is a before and an after. Ultimately, both sides were in a position to understand the other's way of speaking and understand the legitimacy of each.
It seems to me that we have to talk, that there are places where we get on each other's nerves and we get angry at each other and we call each other names, and I think we have to learn how to stop doing that by first of all recognizing Christ in one another. I'm a church historian by training, and it was in my studies of the early church in particular, my field was patristics, and it was in that I really fell in love with the church and realized how ancient the traditions of the churches, both Catholic and Orthodox, are, that go right on back to the patristic period. And so my job as a church historian has been to explain that tradition to people who are relatively rootless in terms of historic tradition, and to take the tradition that I have, which is relatively short, but is very vital in today's church, and share that with the churches that are ancient.
One of the characteristics of the Global Christian Forum as a movement of unity is the emphasis upon relationship. Relationship with Jesus Christ, but through that and because of that, relationship with one another. The Forum's vocation is not, first of all, and not primarily to seek to be an instrument in favor of doctrinal unity. It is, first of all, an instrument in favor of relational unity, of relationships between churches, and between people and leaders in particular, each of whom is already on a journey with Jesus Christ, and then discover that they can journey together.
We had one experience in Delhi. We brought in young people from all denominations, Catholics, Orthodox, Methodist, Baptist, Pentecostal, Evangelicals, and each one started sharing their faith journey. One lady shared her faith journey, how the Lord called her to ministry while she was, in a job, a very important job. And she resigned from a job, listened to the call of God, and joined the service of the church. And how God had gifted her, she speaks in tongues, she prays, and everybody thought she's a Pentecostal. But the reality was she was Catholic charismatic lady. So when she shared her experience, the other evangelicals and Pentecostals sitting there couldn't believe it. So that broke down walls and created a sense of unity. God is at work.
For me, first of all, it is a really valuable experience of communicating with other Christians, with those whom I have never talked to and really couldn't know very close, because we understand that unfortunately in the Christian world we have a lot of barriers, and some of these barriers also are built by our prejudices, and to destroy these barriers, I think the Global Christian Forum is the best tool to destroy this kind of separations, just to enable people just to talk, to make first steps towards each other.
C'est vrai qu'établir des relations de confiance, des relations fraternelles,
It's true that establishing relationships of trust and fraternal relationships by meeting and getting to know one another and by prayer is absolutely essential. And this is what a platform or a forum such as the Global Christian Forum does. But I don't think it stops there. There could be more work on theological aspects and maybe some progress, I hope, theologically. To take just one example, which is delicate, it's true, our way of evangelizing, and especially our way of experiencing baptism. This is obviously a question which needs to be shared between the older churches and the newer ones who are more charismatic, for example. It's a critical issue about which our Orthodox and Catholic brothers and sisters remind those of us who are evangelical or Pentecostal. And it's a question which we have to listen to, but we could listen in a different way if there really is a fraternal atmosphere. The guiding purpose statement of the Global Christian Forum gives it two main objectives: to be a meeting place for mutual knowledge and learning to respect the other, to explore and address together common challenges. In 2012, after finding that after 10 years mutual confidence had grown, the leaders of the Global Christian Forum decided to begin consultations to achieve the second objective. This was how the choice to hold a conference on the theme of discrimination, persecution, and martyrdom gradually emerged, as it was a growing and direct concern for all the churches. Organized by the Global Christian Forum with the Catholic Church, the World Pentecostal Fellowship, the World Council of Churches, and the World Evangelical Alliance, the meeting was held in Tirana from the 1st to the 5th of November 2015. Albania was not chosen by chance.
That Albania had been the country during the 20th century, particularly the period of the communist government of Albania, was a country which probably was one of the most oppressed, where religion was the most oppressed any place, the most militantly anti-religious country that one could find. And it was something to which all religions were subjected. Christianity, Islam, any religion at that point were all subjected to what one might call certainly violence, persecution, oppression. But today in Albania there is a quite well-developed religious liberty and religious tolerance. So in the space of 20 years or less, there has been almost a complete reversal of the situation in Albania in relation to religious freedom. So we thought that place incarnated the message that needed to be given. That is, there is persecution of the church and of other religious groups in the world today. But there is also life after persecution.
I realized that God blessed this initiative, And the first fruit that gave is to see, to realize that in an atheistic country where ruins were instead of the religious shrines, instead of clergy, etc., everything was persecuted. There is a resurrection. This is a life message that we take to the glory of God, that God creates miracles, and through the death, he resurrected the church in Albania. Especially we're talking about the Orthodox Church, but it's equal to the Roman Catholic Church and to the Evangelicals. This is the first point. And the other point is that if we are together and if we are committed together to face problems of the world, maybe there is more hope than we have now.
The Tirana conference made it possible to listen to Christians from countries where they are suffering a great deal. So in Kenya, Christians are being persecuted more and more in certain regions. On the 2nd of April 2015, a Somalian Islamist group attacked the University of Garissa, causing the deaths of 142 students. The terrorists were quite clear that they had specifically targeted Christians and spared Muslims.
When we go back to the Bible and you realize that when there was persecution with the Christians in Acts, that's how the church grew in leaps and bounds. There's something about a suffering church that really attracts growth. And I'm not saying that we need to be suffering so that we can attract growth, but it's a reality. You learn to trust one another, you learn to depend upon one another. The small differences that we've been struggling with no longer exist because we are all then fighting a common enemy. We are all facing a common challenge.
It is a new challenge for ecumenism because Christians aren't being persecuted for being Lutheran or Catholic or Protestant, Orthodox or Pentecostal, but because they are Christians. Pope John Paul II has already experienced this. He expressed it like this: I have lived under two dictatorships, the brown Nazi one and the red communist one, and I have seen that dictators do not distinguish between Protestants, Orthodox and Catholic. Through this I have learned that we belong to the same family. Pope Francis continues in the same vein. John Paul II spoke of the ecumenism of martyrs. Pope Francis speaks of an ecumenism of blood. Blood poured out in the name of faith does not divide us, but it unites us. And if in the early church it was said that the blood of martyrs is the seed of Christians, this is how the Tertullian expressed it, then we can say now, and this is my view, that today the blood of so many martyrs of our contemporary world will be the seed for the full unity of Christians.
At the end of the conference, the participants agreed a message in which they declared, "We acknowledge that solidarity among Christian churches is needed to strengthen Christian witness in the face of discrimination, persecution, and martyrdom. In the 21st century, we need to urgently strengthen the solidarity of all Christians, following up on what has been accomplished with insight and discernment from this consultation. We repent of having at times persecuted each other and other religious communities in history, and ask forgiveness from each other, and pray for new ways of following Christ together."
God's plan that has been a mystery from the beginning of time, but now it's revealed. It's no longer a mystery because it's been revealed, and what has been revealed is that all things are being made one, being called together. Everything in the cosmos is being made one in Jesus Christ. For me, this privilege of walking with others and with all others, to some extent, in the forum is a taste of that thing that Paul is talking about, is the mystery that's been now revealed, and that thing is the plan of God. Unity is not something secondary. Unity is the plan towards which everything is moving.
From Revelations. After this I looked, and there was a great multitude that no one could count, from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, robed in white, with palm branches in their hands. They cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God, who is seated on the throne, and to the Lamb." Lord, we pray for the Global Christian Forum, in particular for its work for our persecuted brothers and sisters. Help us to progress towards unity in this world, suffering from divisions. Raise up peacemakers in our churches and Christian communities who, by their testimony of a privileged relationship with Christ, weave a huge web around the world. Teach us to go beyond our prejudice, go towards one another, and seek dialogue that your kingdom may come. Grant that we may believe that martyrs have not shed their blood in vain, and that the lives they offered up will be seeds of unity.